Good morning from Julia at our Flowerland Garden Centre. Today we're going to look at planting dahlia tubers, and we've got lots of new products in, like our corm and bulb range, these lovely dahlias here. It is actually just a little bit too cold yet. The soil needs to reach about 15 degrees before it's ready for planting, but it isn't anywhere near that temperature just yet. However, this doesn't mean that you can't make a start now and get a little bit of a head start by starting indoors. Now, I have a friend and he grows the most amazing Dahlia Bishop of Llandaff, and I've always wondered why his dahlia is so much taller and floriferous, maybe twice the size of mine. So fortunate for me, he let me in on the secret. He starts his dahlia tubers in pots indoors, in his greenhouse or in the kitchen on a windowsill at this time of the year. And by doing so, these put on a lot of fast growth indoors. And then by the time the weather has warmed up and these can go outside, you've got maybe about a foot extra growth on them than it would when you actually planted, say, maybe in 3 or 4 weeks' time. So this is really about getting a head start on the season. The other good thing about that is it will encourage them to flower earlier in your garden, so you'll get a much longer season of interest from your dahlias. First things first, get a pot, something like this sort of size, about a 12 to 18 inch pot for your tuber. Now, it is commendable to put something in the bottom for drainage, such as crocks. However, I've been reading for some time now that crocks can impede the flow of water and impede drainage. So instead of that, today I'm going to opt for using some moss at the base of the pot for drainage. And just add a layer of this moss. We sell it in the shop, sphagnum moss. We use it for hanging basket, lining hanging baskets too, just at the base, and that will actually help and prevent all those drainage holes at the bottom from clogging up. So that's really important, that there's good drainage. This was also mentioned recently by a company called Proven Winners in America. They did a lot of research on this, and they actually now do not recommend using crocks in containers. They use moss instead. Next, it's important to add a good compost mix, and I'm using our tub and basket compost mix, which is already pre-mixed. And obviously you can tell I should have really brought this in last night, because I've just brought it in this morning. It just feels a little bit cold. So it would be a good idea to actually have everything ready the evening beforehand. It won't cause damage because it's not so chilled, but imagine if it was a frozen morning. I wouldn't even be able to get on with this task because my compost would be physically impossible to work with. And just compact that down a little bit, not too much, just a little, just gentle squeeze. Now, I did remember to be ready the night before, however, on my dahlia corms, and what I do, I get a bucket of water and I soak the corms overnight. When the corms are in these pre-packs, they're slightly dry and desiccated, and by putting them in water overnight, that makes the tuber swell up, and again that gives you a little bit of a head start in terms of growing. Now, if you look closely at the tuber here, this is the stalk bit, and from the stalk there are little eyes coming from each of the nodes where the tuber joins the main stem, and from these eyes you will get the new growth, which will give you your plant. So with this particular one here, here's the stem, so you would plant it upright with the stem above the ground. So just spread out all of these cormlets on the surface of the soil as horizontal as you can, and just plant it with the stem upright. and then actually just cover up all of that area around the stem with soil to about this point. When you open up the packet, occasionally you will have some pieces like this that have actually just fallen off the main stem of the tuber. And if you were to plant these, you would actually plant them horizontally like this. However, I would be inclined not to plant these yet. I would put them resting on the surface of some peat with a little bit of moisture to see if any shoots will appear, because not all of these broken bits will produce an eye and therefore a plant for you. So it would be a complete waste of time to plant them if there was no possibility that these were actually going to grow. In addition to that, if you were to stuff them in with the main plant and they were to rot, it would spread disease to the rest of the plant. Now, if we just look closely here, what I've done is I've placed it, in this instance, with the stem facing upwards and all the tubers spread out on the soil. And it was a good idea to plant them like this, more or less about 2 to 3 inches down. If you're planting your tuber dahlias straight in the ground later on when it's frost-free, it would be commendable to plant them about 4 to 6 inches down. And just another little tip for planting them outside: don't actually water them until they've actually put on the first shoots, because when the tubers are in the ground outdoors, it's important that they don't get too wet and therefore rot. Another little tip for you, it's a good idea to add some perlite into your compost media, because that actually helps with drainage. I haven't done it in this instance because there is actually a good drizzle of perlite in this mix I'm using. But if you're concerned your soil is a bit heavy, add some perlite to it. So we're just going to grab some soil now and infill around as we finish planting Bishop of Llandaff. So we just firm down gently, and we've got the stem in the middle, and we'll leave this either on our kitchen windowsill or in a heated greenhouse to 4 degrees Celsius, and that will put on no amount of growth and give us a speedy start to the season. Now, when your plant reaches 1 foot high, it's very important at that stage to cut off about 3 or 4 inches of the main stem. Now, the reason for that is it gives you a much bushier plant, because it encourages more basal breaks and you'll get a much chunkier plant. So as your stem of dahlia starts to produce flowers, if you want large flowers, just pinch out some of the flower buds, and then the flowers remaining will actually be very large. However, if you want smaller, daintier flowers, but a profusion and a proliferation of flower, then don't pinch out the flowers. Either way, you can decide. It's also very important to think about feeding. These pre-prepared mixes have an adequate feed in for the dahlia to start off. But if you're planting in the ground outside, it would be advisable to use an organic slow release feed like this one here, fish blood and bone meal. So I hope I've covered planting dahlias this morning. I may have forgotten some things, so if you check out the video and just send me some comments and some ideas that you have, or tips like the one I told you about my friend on planting dahlias, or of course if you've got any other questions on planting dahlias or any bulbs this time of the year, just let us know and we'd be happy to get in contact with you. Thank you.